My name is Albert Randall. I was born in Milton, Louisiana. That's spelled Newellton, Louisiana. My parents, my father was Leon Randall. My mother, Rosalie Stevenson, maiden name. Um, my father, I understand as best, is from the Carolinas, and I think is North Carolina. And my mother, of course, is from the Louisiana area, Tensas Parish. Um, in college, I was a pre-medical major, and my whole college career was totally 100% self-financed, at the same time assisting with my younger sisters and brothers. Uh, I graduated from Cal State, Los Angeles, and this was during the Vietnam War, 1962. They had a draft, conscription. Um, I was watching a TV commercial, and no, first I was watching the news, and then this TV commercial came on. But in the news, it showed the Vietnam veterans in the rice paddies with the guns over their head. And that looked very uncomfortable to me. So I thought, oh my God, that's what I got to look forward to. And right after that, they had a commercial by the Air Force say that if you're a college graduate, but had just graduated, and you would like to become an Air Force officer and a pilot, I could go out to Norton Air Force Base, which is San Bernardino right here, and take the Air Force officer qualifying test and flight school test and go in the Air Force and become a pilot. And I thought being a pilot is much better than being in the rice paddies down there. So that's what I did. Um, and moving forward, after pilot school, actually I went to pilot school at Williams Air Force Base right there in Arizona. As a matter of fact, it was very interesting when my daughter, Amber and Kareem, bought their home in Queen Creek. They asked me to go pick up the kids. And it happened to be on Williams Field. And the stop that I was picking them up at was right across from where the solar duct tank was. And I says, oh my goodness, this is really interesting. That was all the way up to just recently, rather recently. But following my pilot school, my flying training, uh, you do undergraduate flying training to learn just the basics of flying and all. And then you get assigned to either bombers, transports, and fighter aircraft or what. And of course, I was the guy that wanted to be at the top of the predatory scheme there. So I wanted to go to fighter school, fighter training, which was the F4 Phantom II. And the combat crew training is where you train how to take that airplane and use it as a weapon platform, was at Davis-Monthan. And that was in 1969. So that's how I got there to Davis-Monthan, 1969. And that was the primary school for training fighter pilots to become fighter pilots. Later on, that was moved to Luke Air Force Base, which I think is currently at. But that's my Davis-Monthan association. And just to add a little bit to that, from Davis-Monthan, my first duty station was in PACAF, they call it, Pacific Air Force. And there I went to Japan. And I think the second picture I sent you today was a picture of me at Misawa Air Force Base, at Misawa Air Base, they call it then, in 1970 about. And that led into the other entity about the flag and all. So I'll stop there and let you ask questions.
Okay, well, that sounds great. I was wondering if you might want to tell us a little bit about the flag and how the story that you put together that was in the Air Force album that you shared with me.
Of course. Okay, we move on with that. So while at Misawa Air Force Base, I was in the 356 Green Demon Squadron. You have, those names for the squadron. And I was the only Black in that squadron, flying, that is. And The scenario is that you have the pilots, that fly, the air crews that fly and the mission, but it's a whole team effect. You have the maintenance people who make sure the airplane is safe to fly. And then you have the crew chief, who's your interface with the enlisted guys who take care of the airplane and your departure for your combat mission. They call crew chiefs. And then you have the weapon loads guys. Usually a crew chief is like a supervisor for the whole aspect of weapon loads and stuff like that. And weapon loads mean things like they put the missiles on for air to air. The missile has to be put on exactly correctly, because when you are, say, in a air-to-air combat, which is a life or death situation, you fire your missile, you want that missile to go off the rail, And if that crew chief or someone messes up, that means you got it dead. The same, we also do air to ground, bomb drops. And you have a target, targets on the ground, they could be trucks or whatever. We typically practice on a range, but there could be trucks, tanks, people or whatever, or troops. And you're dropping bombs like 500-pounders or napalm and stuff like that. Well, if you release that bomb and it hangs up and it doesn't come off, then your life is in danger, because if you land, you can't land with it, you can't get rid of it, or it might slam against the bottom of the aircraft and blow you out of the sky. So those crew chiefs, and load people are very, very important, to the whole mission, our safety and whatnot. Well, this young airman came to me one day and started tears and says he got thrown out of the Airmen's Club. The military have their separation of ranks, for their reason. I would go to an officers club, but he would be at the Airman Club. He said he got thrown out of the Airman Club because he was wearing a dashiki, the black, and a black braid on his arm. He said the sergeant there told him that was provocative and he couldn't come in the club with that. So he approaches me and he says, and point out, look around and says, half of those guys you are flying with have the Confederate flag on their shoulder. And he said, and I'm from Georgia. He said, the Confederate flag, that's from Georgia. And he said, now that's provocative to me. And I says, I'm from Louisiana. And, I wasn't concerned about the provocative aspect of it. But yeah, I can fully understand that. So I'll see what I can do. Now, you have a chain of command. As a air crew, I have nothing directly to do with that airman other than the fact that make sure he's my best friend, that he does his best job to keep me alive in this airplane. But I thought I was, committed to do something to help him out. Mm-hmm. So I thought, what can I do? During that period, you have to recall that these airmen weren't seeing as much because they didn't have media like they do today. So you got whatever you got on the Air Force news and stuff like that. But they knew and let us that their friends, their parents, and their cousins were being attacked with dogs and water hoses and stuff in the United States while they're defending the United States. And here these guys are flying a Confederate flag. So what can I do? Chain of command, I can't just go and say, don't you guys wear it? Or if my appeal, just direct appeal to the supervisor and whatnot would probably go unheard. But I had established a sort of a reputation of being vocal on principles. And for example, my principle was that I was taught in all my training in the Air Force, I was taught how to fly the plane the same way all the other officers were. I was developed the same skill, and I was Top Gun. I was taught the military protocol and the whole works. And my principle was that as an officer, I have to be insisted on being treated, and the regulation all say I must be treated as an officer, notwithstanding race, ethnic group, or whatever. As I'm an officer, so I have to be treated that way. So with all that concept, I thought, what can I do? There were a little latitude, quite a bit of latitude. There were people who wore different patches on their sleeve. I was sort of a clean guy. I wasn't wearing anything. As a matter of fact, Chappie James, our first Rothschild general, he wore a Black Panther on his sleeve. And he said he was the original Black Panther. Okay, that was his statement. So, I wearing a Black Panther, I didn't see what thing. So being practical, I says, how can I send a message to these guys here? What's going on? So I had a patch made up that was a Confederate flag with a black fist superimposed on the flag. And I wore it. As I said, I was top gun in the squadron. And my wing commander, remember I said chain of command, was a full colonel. At the time, I was a captain. The commander doesn't fly, the dangerous missions we fly every day. But when he flies in the plane. He has a two-seater, and to go visit different places, cross country or whatever. And they take one of the top crew members, to fly with them, quote, to keep him safe, in essence. So they told me to go with Colonel Eichelberger. I can't remember his first name, Eichelberger, from Misawa, Japan to Yokota, which is in southern part of Japan. Misawa is in the north, in the southern part of Japan, to meet with these generals and political leaders and all, because they were discussing about whether or not Japan would allow offensive combat aircraft in northern Japan. We were there because it's not far from Russia, but whether they should. So they asked me to go with them. The protocol is that when we disembark from the plane, you have a ladder you can see on the plane. Is that the colonel is sitting in the front. He comes down first, and to meet us, there were the mayors of Osaka and Tokyo. There was the base commander of Yokota. There was the governor of prefecture, or whatever they call it, and there was the general, one of the generals of the area. And there was news from Osaka news, Tokyo news, and of course, Air Force news and Air Force time. And they took pictures. They were taking pictures. Well, as the reception continued, I was stooping on the intake. You can see that area up there waiting for my turn to come down. They give me the same, greet me as well, but it's just the colonel goes first, to come down. And I had been wearing this patch for a few months. And, with sort of like, no one can tell me to take this off because the other guys wear their patches, and they sort of understood that because that's my persona. So no one told me to take it off, So we spent about 4 days down in at Yokota, and we went back. When we landed, my commander, the colonel, was congratulating me on being top gun and enjoying the flight with me. And he didn't say anything else to me. But remember, I used the term chain of command. Well, the chain of command is this: my boss was Major Schwartz. So apparently, after I landed, the colonel told Major Schwartz to tell me to take off my patch. When Major Schwartz came up to me to tell me to take off my patch, I assumed attention, and I saluted him, and I says, "No, sir, I will not take off my patch as long as those other guys are allowed to wear their patch, Confederate flag." Major Schwartz left, after salute. I guess he went back and told the colonel what I said. And in 15 minutes, there was a general officer's call. That means every officer on that base, no matter where you were on leave or whatever, at home or whatever, you were to report to the command post immediately. And we did. So the commander came out in the meeting. We thought we were going to war, because another thing I didn't quite add in is that where we were, we would intercept they call them bears, the big bombers that come out of Vladivostok, Russia, and fly down the center of the Japan Sea. Well, they could do that legally because that's international water. But anytime they do that, they were only 15 minutes from one of the bases we were at or anything. So we had to intercept them and fly with them. And at the same time, we were having problems with the Koreans. They had captured a small Navy boat and that type of thing, the Pueblo incident, stuff like that. We were sort of on edge, like a war footing edge. So everyone thought when they called us for a general officer's call, we were going to war. We had just come back from down south, with the big conference and all. Mm-hmm. And so we all reported, and the commander walked out and he says, as of this moment, the only thing allowed on your sleeve is the American flag. Day one. Day two, in what they call the theater in PACAF, it says only thing allowed on your sleeve the American flag. And about day 3 or 4, the Air Force all allowed, and with a couple more days, all of DOD says the only thing allowed on your sleeve is the American flag. I didn't know the impact of it at that moment because I went from Japan to Germany. But when I got back to the United States, I discovered not only did all the DOD wear the American flag, so did all policemen, state policemen, paramilitary, and all sported the American flag. That's the note that's in the almanac.
Well, I tell you, that's an amazing story to share with us and inform us of how much of an impact you had on what is now the uniform for all military and police officers, that they now wear the American flag on their sleeve by you putting a black fist on a Confederate flag and getting the attention of the military to make that change. So that's an amazing story and a great tribute to your strength of mind and your values of making sure that nothing like that would happen again, especially to African Americans or just Americans in general, that they can now proudly wear the American flag, which it should have been in the first place. So yes. Thank you so much for doing that. Absolutely. Oh. It's something I'm sure most people have no idea why that American flag, why they're even wearing that flag on their sleeve. So this is a story that we certainly will be sharing with a lot of people. And I think it will go over especially well during Veterans Day and days where we honor those of you who've served. And I'd like to say thank you also for your service to this country, because it definitely sounds like you not only served, but you also served your race as well. And that makes us very proud at the African American Museum of Southern Arizona, and also being a part of Davis-Monthan Air Force Base.
And I have to thank you tremendously because to bring this to attention, above and beyond, my small fear. As I said, I had no idea of the total impact. My whole interest there was I was approached by someone who was had a lesser platform than me, and I did have a platform for notice that I could get the attention of the wing commander, to do so. But I had no idea it would go to that extent. But this helps expand that note that, as you said, I think very few people know about other than people who have came in contact with me directly. There was nothing published about it. It went over very quietly, and the Confederate flag just disappeared, within. But the other, the testament is to the power to the military, when they want to do something, it is done. Mm-hmm. And another reason why a lot of Black Americans, have adverse thought of the military and whatnot. But what I liked about the military was that as I was trained, just as every other officer was, I insisted as I faced my superiors that I was treated like every other officer was.
That's wonderful to hear. Did you have a question?
No, no.
Okay, okay, hang on. And can you see it in the chat?
No, in the chat. I was looking for a share screen. In the chat is here. Okay, I got you. Yes. Virtual agreement. I, Albert Randall, agreed to be interviewed and recorded by Beverly Elliott for the African American Museum of Southern Arizona on January 11, 2022. Copyright statement. Upon completion of this interview, I hereby grant Beverly Elliott and the African American Museum of Southern Arizona for perpetual use this reproduction for distribution or any derivative work, performance, and display of this work. Future use, I give my permission for the recording to be used for educational and research purposes, to be included in the publication or exhibit, to be made available online, and to be deposited in an archive or repository.
Thank you.
My pleasure.